What has been the most surprising development of Nebraska's offseason? We discuss next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase.
Okay, welcome in. It is Wednesday. We're trucking along through the week here, June 11th. Normal episode today. We've got no guest. If you missed Mike Schaefer of Husker 247, he was with us yesterday to talk all things Nebraska recruiting and just Nebraska football in general. Go check that out, the Tuesday episode. If you missed our attempt to catch up for a lost week, we did that on Monday. So go check that out. Today, here on the show, we want to focus on one subject here in the opening segment, maybe into the second portion of the show too. But last week, Connor, Nebraska added a punter, Archie Wilson, the Aussie. He slipped in under the cover of night, started workouts with the Huskers on June 2nd, enrolled in school. And I would say that Mr. Wilson joined a small group of Nebraska football players. He's certainly the only freshman in this group whose job security is really not in question.
Yeah.
Now, if he is a dud, Nebraska could pivot and go with Camden Cook, the redshirt freshman punter, who's a known commodity, son of former Nebraska great and longtime NFL punter Sam Cook. But we're expecting that Archie Wilson is going to be the guy back there taking snaps on August 28th at Arrowhead Stadium, because Mike Eckler and Nebraska are committed to this rugby-style punt system. I would say that his addition at this late time, this late hour, this 11th hour of the offseason. Maybe it's not the 11th hour of the offseason, but it's the 11th hour of adding players for sure to the roster.
It's getting very late. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the single most unexpected development of the past 6 months in Nebraska football. Like, what else would top this?
Okay, so first of all, I think you're right about the job security thing. I mean, he just fits what they want, and he's going to be their punter next year, barring like super duper unforeseen circumstances. He's going to be Nebraska's punter, and we don't really know anything about him except for he's from Australia and his name is Archie, and he kicks with both legs, right? That's his bit.
Seemingly, yeah. Okay. That's the word. I believe that there was a comment from Eckler that they wanted a dual-footed punter, and they found one here.
Okay,
he had one at Tennessee.
Interesting.
Jackson Ross. Yeah.
I wonder if they like what the splits will be on because there's been a couple pitchers who throw with both arms, right? So the punters who kick with both legs, which one has more power, which one has more finesse, Yeah.
I wonder if he can pitch with both arms.
Yeah, if you need to bust out like a big one, if you need to drop like a 50+ yarder, which leg do you go to? Like switch hitters, sometimes they're a little bit more natural from the left-hand side, but they're better contact-wise from the right side. But if they need a big swing, they go to the left-hand side. I wonder which leg that is for Archie.
Is Archie Wilson the most anticipated interview of preseason camp? And part B to that question, do we get the opportunity to speak with him before he takes the field at Arrowhead Stadium?
I think so. I think I think he'll probably do some. I mean, we'll get bored during fall camp. There's no doubt.
Oh, we will. Yeah. The question is, will Nebraska, are they going to put him in that situation? I would say do it. And Matt Rhule generally walks down this road. He understands that there's some pressure involved and there's some expectation and there's all the things that you want from a player that you're going to put out there and require them to have to perform in a moment. Like, it translates a little bit to, there's accountability involved in going and answering questions in front of a bunch of I'm not going to use a derogatory term to refer to the media here, but a bunch of people. Some people wouldn't have got the joke. It would have gone over flat.
Okay,
if
good.
I was
just holster that one.
Yeah,
work on
it. Right. There's some accountability involved in answering questions from the media, especially when you've never played at this level. And I think Rhule likes that, to put that on those guys. So I think we'll get the chance to hear from Archie Wilson. And it's a good sign if we do, because that means they believe that he can handle it.
Yeah. I think so too. So I'm not. I think he's Nebraska's punter. That's for sure.
Think about, though, like a player at any other position getting added to the roster in the middle of spring or the end of spring, and them saying, all right, now you're the starter. Like, you're the number one guy at that spot. Like, that could not happen at running back or wide receiver. I suppose if it's a transfer, like if you were to bring in a great wide receiver in the spring portal, and they did not go through spring practice, but if they had played the Power 4 or the FBS level football, then you'd pencil them into the starting lineup, but not with a freshman. Like, this kind of thing, just it's so odd, and that it happened when it did, so unusual. And honestly, like, punter is such an important position for Nebraska, because we've seen that it's at the heart of what's gone on with special teams, good or bad, for the Huskers in determining games over the past several years. More often should happen.
I got no problem with it whatsoever. Like, I think that's the way they want to go. And unfortunately, Jack McAllister got caught up in the crossfire there a little bit. Mm-hmm. So you hate to see that for him, but Nebraska, there was a line drawn in the sand here, so that's the direction they went. Is it the most unexpected development of the last 6 months? So I was thinking about this question. We're talking now, maybe I need to broaden my sort of horizons a little bit and think bigger picture. But one of the first things that came to my mind outside of this, and there's no doubt about it. Mike Eckler comes in and he's like, I want to change the entire thing, and we're gonna move out a punter and move in a punter, and he's from Australia, and we got to learn all about him and all these different things. Like, it's a big time philosophy change. I don't know if this is bigger potatoes or smaller potatoes, but a guy like Nate Borkircher going into the transfer portal, like, he kind of got caught up in the wash of everybody else going into the transfer portal. And maybe you could look at some of the other entries and be like, I don't know, I'm not particularly surprised about that. That one did surprise me. And maybe we didn't talk about that enough because it was so fast moving during, December and January. As far as the transfer portal was concerned, I put that right up there. That was the first thing that came to my mind.
I view that one as specifically a money thing. That was like a player valuation where, and it's not that Nebraska didn't value Nate Borkircher. It's that sometimes it comes down to like what you have at the position, and Borkircher would have gone into spring as the leader at that group. He was ahead of Lindenmeyer, and we've talked a lot about Luke Lindenmeyer here in recent weeks and about how he's probably the most well-rounded tight end, the tight end that Nebraska has who's most comfortable playing all the reps, like doing everything that they ask a tight end to do. He doesn't have as high of a ceiling as a receiver as a Carter Nelson or a Heinrich Harburg. He, maybe isn't as I think he's the best blocking tight end on the team. But anyway, Borkircher was ahead of Lindenmeyer, in part because he's older. And for whatever reason, though, like, there was more money to be had. There was more out there for Borkircher in the transfer market than would have existed for him at Nebraska. And I think that the unique thing about Matt Rhule is he's upfront with his guys about that. Like, he'll tell them, we want you, but if you go out, if you go out and become a free agent, you're probably going to end up getting paid more. Now, for some players, that's the right decision. For others, it's maybe short-sighted because they could lose a few steps in their growth and development. And on the other side of it, maybe you don't end up getting drafted in the same spot that you would. But I think with Borkircher, he found a spot in the SEC. He's at Texas A&M. And this is it was surprising for sure, But I think it's not surprising in the sense that like this is just what college football is right now. And there are these types of situations where someone leaves because they're going to get paid more to play at a school that is more desperate. Desperate teams set the market. That is more desperate than Nebraska at that position.
Yeah. And so I got another one just for you real quick, and you can react to this. Like, I guess I would say Nebraska, maybe a surprising development. I had some real consternation about sort of the depth and how much Nebraska needed to add in the transfer portal when that thing started. So this is sort of on the same lines, I guess. And when you think about all the guys that they ended up getting, I mean, they have more than a handful of players out of the transfer portal that were starters at like Power 5 schools last year and are going to be starters for Nebraska this upcoming year, both on offense and on the defensive side of the ball. So I guess I would just say like how well they turned out. I think there's an element to this question that is obviously TBD because they haven't played any games yet, but like I think they turned out pretty well in the transfer portal. I was kind of concerned there for a minute. The only position that they didn't add, and maybe we would have liked to see him add, would probably have been running back. We talked about that for the last 4 months, but I mean, I think they turned out pretty well in that category with what they added, both offensively and defensively.
Yeah, it's a surprise that Nebraska did. Surprise! It's it's refreshing. What I see across the board in Nebraska sports right now. We talked a little bit about this with Schaefer on Tuesday. Is that there are programs that are the haves to break it down, and then kind of like there's like the middle ground and there's like the have-nots at Nebraska, and it has to be like that. I think in this post house settlement world, and that's the world that Nebraska was operating in as it structured its rosters and allocated resources for the season ahead, even though the house settlement had not yet passed. Obviously, football is at the top of the food chain in what it's allocated and the resources that it's given and the support that it has from an administrative side. And you've seen how Nebraska prioritizes wrestling by being able to go out and get AJ Ferrari. You've seen how Nebraska, as an athletic department, prioritizes volleyball by being able to have the ability to go out and get an Italian national team player or future national team player in Virginia Adriano to play a position where Nebraska already had talent. Nebraska yesterday signed a catcher in softball out of the portal who looks like a big time addition to replace one of the few seniors that departed this last season. She's going to be Jordy Ball's battery mate next year, but it can't be like that with every program. Football, obviously it is. And that's why, to me, the expectation was that Nebraska was going to be aggressive in the portal. Then the question becomes, are the players going to want to come? You're going to have the money. You're going to have the resources. You're going to have everything at your disposal that you need to go out and hit it hard in the portal. The question is, do they want to come be a part? And the answer that Nebraska got in December and January this year was yes. They got many of the players they targeted. And all you have to do is look at the offensive line as like an illustration of that. And you could say Nebraska added a left tackle and it added a right guard from Alabama and Notre Dame. Enough said.
Yeah, they answered the bell. That's for sure.
Yeah. I've got one more after the break. We'll come back. We'll finish up this conversation. I've got one more to run by you that I would single out as an unexpected development of the past 6 months. And it involves a piece of personnel on the Nebraska defense. So that is coming up after this. But first, a second here to tell you about Gametime. And the reason we're talking about Gametime is because there's nothing like the energy of a live game, a live sporting event, whether it's being out there and catching a Major League Baseball showdown or soaking up the excitement of an NBA game. There's still opportunities. If you're a big NBA fan, the NBA finals are being contested right now here somewhat in our part of the country. Would you say, Connor, like the NBA finals are closer to us right now than you usually get? I mean, get to Oklahoma City, get to Indianapolis, use Gametime. You're a big NBA fan, find a ticket to a game at one of those arenas. What Gametime does is it makes scoring last-minute tickets easier than ever. Prices drop in many cases as the event gets closer. They've got all-in pricing. You see the total cost up front. There's no surprises at checkout. Here's why I love using Gametime, because on June 27th, I'm going to the Kansas City Royals game. And if I want, I've got tickets. I already got them. If I want to get some more tickets because some other people want to join me in the group that I'm going with, and we've got a big group, I'm going to go to Gametime to find those tickets. Gametime has last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off tickets for the last minutes. They also cater to concerts, comedy, theater. You can get last-minute tickets for whatever kind of event you want and save big with their zone deals. Plus, you've got the peace of mind of knowing that you can see your seat view before you buy. No surprise fees, lowest price guarantee. Book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
All right, welcome back. Connor Hamper, Mitch Sherman with you here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Surprising developments of the offseason. Mitch Sherman, I turn the floor over to you.
Yeah, I've got one more. Did you know the name Jacob Bauer before the end of spring? And this is Matt Rhule.
Maybe
this is Matt Rhule driven.
Maybe I knew the name, but not as prominently as it was talked about in the spring for sure.
Yeah. Some of these are coach driven, and you get this, and I think you have to take those with a grain of salt. Like the Archie Wilson thing, which led us off in this conversation, is not coach driven. That's not something where Nebraska talked him up. All it was a leak of information that the Huskers were out when we knew this was going to happen because of the Jack McAllister departure. And Rhule talked extensively about the reason for that back in April. But the Archie Wilson thing happened organically. It was, hey, here he is. He's coming. Like, everybody can see the significance of it. Jacob Bauer's a little bit different. He's the linebacker from California who was a walk-on, did not make the 105 or the 110 that were invited into camp last August. And yet at the end of spring, just 7-8 months later, he is too good to play with the twos. Like he's played himself out of a role with the backup defense and into a spot where they have to put him out there with the ones. I mean, I don't know that we're going to see him as a starting linebacker against Cincinnati on Nebraska's first defensive series of the season, but he's going to be in the rotation and somebody who's coming in and getting reps in crunch time. And I think he's also going to be a mainstay on Mike Eckler's special teams. So he has a rugby background. Maybe Eckler just has like a soft spot for all things rugby. I'm not sure, but he is not somebody that was on my radar it wasn't on my bingo card to be a player that we were talking about going into July.
Okay. I was trying to think about like one more last second entry here that wasn't like directly football and personnel related. And the only thing I can come up with, and I don't think it probably registers that much as a surprise, is Nebraska getting red end zones for their turf this upcoming year. And by the way, we haven't talked about this part. The sideline cutout where the team stands, black, which is going to be at least 30 degrees hotter than any other portion of the field in September when you don't want that.
Right. And the visitor is standing directly in the sun. So Nebraska's sideline also is painted black.
Yeah.
The difference being that the Huskers will be in the shade for the most part. You know, if it's an 11 a.m. kickoff and it's a hot day, which doesn't really happen. It doesn't get hot. It can, but we know kickoff times. One of those early games, either Akron or Akron's at night. Houston Christian in week 3 is an 11 a.m. kickoff. So if it's hot on September 13th, Nebraska might be standing in the heat for a few hours for the first half of that game, maybe the whole game. But in normal times, like Michigan on September 20th, if that's a hot day, and it is a. Do we know the kickoff time for that? Is it
2:30?
Did that one get 2:30? Yeah, 2:30.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Michigan's going to be in the heat, and Nebraska's going to be in the shade. So they painted the end zones, they painted the sidelines for Michigan to be hot on September 20th in the September afternoon sun.
Maybe they did. Yeah, maybe that was the whole purpose behind it. As they switched sidelines last year. So yeah,
it's the gamesmanship. It's like, hey, you came to Lincoln a couple years ago and stole our signs, and even if you didn't steal our signs, we're mad at you because that's how you ran your program. So we're going to paint our sideline black for you to stand in the sun on September 20th.
Yeah, I think that's good. I like that. And there will be maybe, a year down the line or something like that. Sherrone Moore I guess he won't be there.
He won't be there. He's not coming. He doesn't need to come to that game.
Great. Perfect. There's already a lot going into that, which is fantastic. Any other surprises that you want to talk about before we kind of move to the next thing here?
Yeah, I was surprised, and this is moving to the next thing. I was surprised to hear what Matt Rhule said on the Jim Rome show on Tuesday, talking about Dylan Raiola. Here's a quote. He could have taken the easy way out and left and gone to some place where he could start over, maybe where he doesn't have to do as much, but he chose to stick it out and fight and come back. Am I off base here, or has Matt Rhule not been that transparent and open at any point since the December portal period about the fact that Dylan Raiola could have just given up on Nebraska after 1 year?
Well, he even he during that quote, under his breath, he was like, yeah, people, he didn't quite complete the sentence, but he was like, well, people reached out,
Well, I think we do that, but it's different when the head coach says it. Yeah.
100%. So, I think that's he's using that, to say, hey, look, man, he's great. Like, he doubled down on the program. He loves us. We love him, like that entire thing. But I do think to confirm that there was some hey, is this all going to come to fruition is sort of interesting. To think about. And that's certainly that would have been the biggest surprise of the us. That would have taken over the Archie Wilson news by a long shot if that would have actually came to fruition in the offseason.
Yeah, it kind of validates too that, I mean, you probably don't say that if there wasn't some level of concern among the coaching staff at that time about what Dylan was going to do, because, a player, any player, even if you feel like they're the most loyal player in the program, any player could change the conversation in a heartbeat, where you as a coach feel great about the way it's going and you feel like there's a full commitment on the part of the player, and then a phone call comes in or a text comes in and all of a sudden they're gone. Like that's not how it went with Borkature, who we talked about earlier. I think he had a conversation with Rhule about being able to maximize his value, but it can also go the other way, where a player just says, hey, sorry, I know I said all the right things and we've done all the right things for the last year, but I'm going to now leave. And so I think with Rhule saying that in the national media this week, which what a time. I mean, here we go. Like, Matt Rhule's going to pop up in these appearances like he did on Tuesday. And yeah, so rack him. And
Roby just called him up. He's like, yeah, you want to come on the show? All right. Sounds good.
Yeah. So it validates that there were worries, or there was at least the thought, like, oh no, what are we going to do if this happens back in December?
One more. I have one more thought on this. We'll do that after the break, and a couple of news and notes, both from a recruiting standpoint, coming up next.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're back to wrap up the podcast. Thanks for joining us here at Locked On Nebraska. Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer with you on this Wednesday. Hey, we didn't do a mailbag last week because we didn't have any podcasts last week, but remember to get those. It's tough to do a mailbag when you have no shows.
True.
Let's get those questions in. We'll go back and we'll look at the inbox from a week ago and see what you guys were talking about. And if it's still pertinent to the conversation here as we get to the middle of June, we'll roll that out. And we'll also look for some new questions. So if you got some stuff on the house settlement, we had a question earlier this week that came in on Twitter asking about some house settlement, like salary type things that we'll try to address on Friday's show. But whatever else that you guys got that's going on right now, ask us. LockedOnNEB@gmail.com is the place that you can get our attention the most easily. You said that you've got something else to finish out this surprising development of the offseason conversation.
Well, I was just thinking about, like, with the whole with Rhule giving that quote on Jim Rome's show about Dylan Raiola and how he decided to come back. I think it sort of proves like if Nebraska doesn't have that uptick at the end of last year offensively, like if Dana Holgerson's not their offensive coordinator, and I would say specifically, like if they didn't have that good result in the Wisconsin game, like a really nice offensive day, he probably doesn't come back, like I think it goes to show you like how important that is. It's the thing that I'm putting, Dana Holgerson in particular. I think like I'm just putting all my eggs into that basket. If you think Nebraska is going to be pretty good this year, you must think that their offense is going to be all right, and Dana Holgerson is going to lead them to that place. And then, obviously Dylan Raiola has to hold up his end of the bargain as well. But if they don't have that positive production at the end of last year, we are not having the same conversation at all.
It requires a fairly urgent circumstance to switch offensive coordinators 10 games into the year or 9 games into the year. Like, you've got to be headed for like the edge of a cliff to make that decision, especially to do it and bring in somebody who hasn't been with your program at any point over that season.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's outside of the bounds of what's realistic to say that move didn't just save Nebraska's season in 2024. If they don't make the move, they probably don't go to a bowl game. Like they perhaps lose out. And Nebraska only won one remaining game with Holgerson in charge, but it was a big one. It was that Wisconsin game that you mentioned. And it was a game where you saw perhaps the future of the Nebraska offense on display. If they don't do that and they say, we're going to do this the standard way and ride it through until December, and then we'll assess the situation, and Nebraska finishes 5-7 in the regular season and has another year of not being at home. And the last time that we saw this team on the field was after a 6-game losing streak, and it ended against Iowa, and they make a change at OC in December, which would have happened, obviously. Yeah, I think you're right in that there would probably be a different quarterback in command of this thing right now.
Yeah, so that's it's a pretty big deal in my mind. All right, a couple other news and notes here. Nebraska got a commitment for the 2026 class, something that they're a little short on at the moment, but this will help. Rex Waterman from Chandler, Arizona. They call
sounds
him
like an O lineman.
Yeah, they call him a road grader on the offensive line. He looks like it too. He's got the long hair, big kid. So there's a pickup for Nebraska for Donnie Raiola on the offensive line.
First O lineman in this class, 5 commits for Nebraska now in the 2026 class, and I think the thought here is that they're going to add some more in the month of June. Last year, you had commits trickle in through June, and then a bunch of them came in July too. The year before, there was kind of a snowball effect after Danny Kaelin committed, where a bunch of players came on board. Like, it was seemingly every day through the month of June. And then in the 25 class, it was a slower process and lingered into like mid-July before camp started. So I think they're more likely to go that route. And by the time Nebraska goes to Big Ten Media Days on July 22nd, I think you'll probably see them have somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 10 to maybe 12 commitments, which I think they'll be happy with. So we'll see like what that group looks like, because it's not just about numbers. Certainly not in today's world. It's not just about numbers. It's about
definitely
having the right players at the right positions with the right valuations behind them. So on that subject, in other recruiting news, on Tuesday, Nelson Wheeler, a running back from Millard South, committed to Illinois. And I think we're at the place in talking about recruiting in the state of Nebraska where this wouldn't even necessarily like be on our radar that much, except for the fact that he's committing to Illinois. If it had been Wake Forest or Arizona State, we probably wouldn't be talking about it here. But this is a team that Nebraska is going to see, and he joins Millard South teammate, offensive lineman Landon Von Segern, as an Illinois commit. So Illinois has more commitments than Nebraska does from the state of Nebraska in this 2026 class. Iowa State has 6 times as many commitments as Nebraska does in this 2026 class, including a trio from Millard South. Both of the Illinois commits are from Millard South. And then Iowa State has the quarterback, Jet Tamala, plus the 2 wide receivers, Marion Jackson and Caprice Keith, who are Millard South receivers. And then Missouri got a Millard South player, tied into Isaac Jensen, on Monday. And he's the one out of all of these recruits we've mentioned who had a Nebraska offer. So we talked a bit about this on Tuesday with Mike Schaefer, but every time somebody from the state of Nebraska commits to another relevant program, whether it's the SEC or the Big Ten in the case of Tuesday's news, we're going to bring it up because I think it's just interesting to people around here. It's a different way of doing business than what Nebraska football is accustomed to see players go out of state. Am I overselling that? Is this something that we should be paying attention to, or do we just like shove all this under the rug at this point?
No, well, maybe a little bit of both, but like I do think particularly with a running back, it's interesting to talk about like a skill position player. I mean, Nebraska has produced as a state a lot of offensive linemen, defensive, I suppose like linebackers, tight ends, guys like that, like, kind of bigger Midwest guys in the past that go off and be regional recruits. And then Nebraska gets their fair share of them as well. But the skill position players are at a little bit of a premium. I mean, running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers, corners, stuff like that. Like there's not many of those. So for Nebraska to, to not get, not be interested really in a running back in their own backyard at a position where they could maybe use a little bit of depth, I find that mildly fascinating. Like that's something.
We among the Nebraskans who are terribly eastern part of the state biased and only recognize football in Omaha and perhaps Lincoln, maybe haven't paid attention as much to Nelson Wheeler of Millard South because he played last year at Grand Island. Grand Island, what's that? Like I'm joking. I understand.
That's way out there. That's what that's in the Mountain Time Zone, isn't it? That's way out there.
So he ran for 1,032 yards on 152 carries and had 7 touchdowns at GI last year. Runs a 10.600, and he's a compact guy, 5'9", 200 pounds. I got to say, like before Nelson Wheeler transferred in recent weeks to Omaha to play at Millard South with the super team that they got going on there on 148th and Q. I didn't know about him. Like I didn't know who this was, but he came to Millard South and all of a sudden he became a Power 4 prospect. And now he's going to a Big Ten program that is going to be ranked this year to start the season. I mean, like Illinois is a team to watch out for. That's a pretty good spot for somebody who really wasn't on the recruiting scene just a couple of months ago.
No doubt about it. Yeah. So I it's not nothing, but it is getting a little it's happening a lot. So it's almost like, okay, well, it happened again. Or what am I supposed to do about we're going to have the same conversation for the 14th time, So I think it's kind of like that right now.
I don't know, and we're well into the camp season now. There's more camps that are going on this week, and they kind of wrap up on the 19th. Nebraska is having the post-grad camp. I don't know if this was something that they added as a response to the House settlement that allows players to be grandfathered in. Of course, you have more flexibility now with the roster. I didn't believe that they were holding the post-grad camp, which has produced Jalen Gramstad, Hayes Miller, James Williams the last couple of years, but it's on the schedule now for June 19th to have the post-grad camp. Anyway, that's when things wrap up. Up until then, they still have camps going on just about every day in Lincoln. And I'll be interested to see if like there's some kind of a surprise, like one of these commits, like maybe one of the Iowa State commits, or there's an offensive tackle from Norfolk Catholic who's committed to Northwestern, Leighton Burbach. Like if one of these guys heads down to Lincoln and tries to work out for the Nebraska coaches just to see if they can get an offer, because none of these players have offers. Like all of these players, other than Isaac Jensen, who have committed elsewhere within the Big Ten and the SEC, they don't have offers from Nebraska. The only offers are Darian Jones, the Omaha North DB, Jensen, and then Nebraska's one commitment in state, Jace Reynolds, the linebacker from Elkhorn North. So I'll be interested to see what happens if somebody just decides to get in their car and go down to Lincoln and work out and see if they can get an offer because they dream of going to Nebraska. It's not out of the question.
No, it's not. All right, that's it for us today. Thanks for tuning in. Back again tomorrow, and don't forget to get your mailbag questions in on Friday. Appreciate you making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, you can check out the Portal Show with Brian Smith. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.